My Lords, as I stand in this House for the first time after 22 years of absence, I was particularly touched by the words of welcome by the noble Lords Lord Ponsonby, Lord Thomas and Lord Howard. And of course I remember those faraway days in the Cambridge Union jousting with Lord Howard, Michael Howard, when we were at Cambridge together. This is a speech which is a kind of maiden speech, which is not a maiden speech. The reason is very simple, that the maiden speech which I did indeed make in 1972 has counted in. And let me just set the scene then, that it was during the Edward Heath government. The leader of the House was Earl Jellicoe, the son of Admiral Jellicoe of Jutland fame. The leader of the opposition was Lord Shackleton, the son of the great Antarctic explorer. We had one cabinet minister in the Lords, Lord Carrington, Secretary of State for Defence, and Lord Hailsham, after his sojourn in the House of Commons, returned to sit on the woolsack and then give fairly audible asides to the bishops, saying nothing complimentary about anybody. And when the bishops went on the bench beside him, he turned to his left to the Liberals and gave the same asides to them. So it was that my maiden speech was made on the 26th of April, 1972. And rather unbelievably, when we get to our April of 2022, that'll be 50 years since I first spoke in the House. But I remember if it was yesterday. The debate was on a UK population policy. It was moved by Lord Vernon. On the government front bench was Lord Aberdare, and on the Labour front bench was Baroness Sorota. But I particularly remember Baroness Gaitskell, the widow of Hugh Gaitskell, and Baroness Summerscale, who, as Edith Summerscale in the House of Commons, the other place, was a very feisty member. But the particular feature I remember, they came to this House wearing hats, rather good hats. And indeed, they were not the only peeresses who felt that they were in a state of undress unless they came into the House with hats. And it's somewhat of a disappointment now for me to find a lot of very welcome live peeresses, but no hats at all. Now, what I would just like to do, make a slightly different approach to other noble lords, and is to look at the changes that has come to this House and how they impact on our work on bills such as this one. And when you've been away for 22 years, you do notice significant changes. The first and the most welcome change is the presence of many more high, in terms of quantity and quality, of life peeresses, who are clearly now major contributors to the work of this House. And that provides a massive benefit. The other noticeable change is the House is now much more proactive and busy. It has a contemporaneous chamber, and which I notice is still at business in the Grand Committee in the Moses Room. You can identify other features of the House today. The much greater use of questions, oral and written, the number of speakers that take part in each debate. I understand when we got to 25 speakers for this debate, then a stop was put, but there would have been others if they could have listed themselves. And the other is the number of amendments that this House moves. I can say that the noble Lord Wilson remembers well, and it's a bit heavy to hold in the hand, the Police, Crime and Sentencing and Courts Bill, And he will also remember well, and I'm holding this also in my hand, the number of marshalled amendments. I did ask, because I was interested, the Legislative Office, how many amendments had been tabled and moved for the report stage. And I got the astounding figure of 730 amendments. And the worry about that is that while it is a great achievement to get these bills such as that one through the House, what is it also doing? It's cascading onto the user new laws, new laws, new laws. The lawyers who have to interpret them, and that's not altogether easy. Take clause 1 of this bill. It's only when you get to subclause 9 and the 2 sentences resting beneath that does one begin to understand what is the objective of that provision. And then the judges who apply them, and the numerous others users, like the police, like health workers and so forth, in the Health and Care Bill, these responsibilities. I have a first cousin who is a very distinguished, he's now retired, professor in criminology at Ottawa University. And he wrote a book headed up, Less Law, More Order. I suggest we should be thinking about this thinking about this when we have any bill in front of us like this, because I think there's a grave danger that this bill may become a victim of more law and less order. Moving to the bill itself, and I should disclose here that I am on the Council of Justice, the legal charity that is actively involved in access to justice and the presentation of justice. But coming to the bill, I will leave all comment on part 2. That can be done at the committee stage. But I do have, as with other peers, a grave concern over part 1. I believe, first of all, as a matter of principle, we should not be providing a statutory block in the judicial review appeal processes, as identified by many of them, as identified, many of them being asylum and immigration appeals. These people are the most vulnerable people who ever enter into our court system. And as Lord Dyson said in Cart on page 39, in asylum cases, fundamental human rights are in play, often including the right to life and the right not to be subject to torture. I hope very much when we get to committee and report that we will recognise that in the processes that now exist, and through the first tier and then the upper tier, that the meritorious applications do get further consideration, and the non-meritorious applications are dismissed. And I believe, therefore, for those practical reasons, that we needn't interfere with the structures that are now in place, particularly under the 207 Act, the Tribunals Act, and we're taking a step back if we start interfering with that. Thank you very much.
It's a great privilege for me, as a relatively